I'm Bethany.
And I'm Lauryn.
Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing at the individual and the collective level.
Join us as we invite guests to share their personal paths to freedom.
Hi, beautiful.
Welcome to the emergency meeting of the Healing Collective podcast, where I've chosen to come wild and free, or as someone recently said to me, feral.
I was there for that. That happened, actually. She said it in the most loving way, though.
Oh, it was like actually the perfect thing. And I'm like, it feels really important to what I'm experiencing right now. So I'm like, this is a way I would never go on any recording ever.
You're playing with your feral persona. It's beautiful. You're learning to love it.
Who I am, uncontrolled by any belief of who I should be.
Beautiful. Well, I got like tingles. All right, girl.
Where do we start? Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going to come out because I've been processing a little bit. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to trust.
Let me just tell people, this is not a record, like a planned cast. Here's what's real. Lauryn and I have been talking to people on this podcast about their experiences and what they think about healing. But what's true is her and I talk to each other every other day with some shit that's happening in our lives and support each other. And a lot of times we get off the phone and we're like, I wonder if that would be helpful to hear. And so this is just Lauryn and I talking to each other about some of the stuff we're learning and realizing, but we're recording it to share with y'all.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to start streaming. We'll see what comes out. So for context, for everyone else, because you already know this, I'm really playing with some, what I like to say, magical powers, which I'll explain more about what I'm actually understanding about that later. And recently I went into two people's fields and saw memories that I never knew happened and was able to describe to them like what I saw. And this is something that I've been doing for my whole life to a certain extent. I have always, the way that it's been, or I've experienced it more is like that I can feel things from people that don't match what they're saying. And it's always like super confusing to me, or energetically they feel one way, but they express that they're another way. And the more I play with this, the more I recognize like I'm attuning to some part of who they are that often they are not even connected to. So then I started asking myself, can I do this to myself? So I ended up playing with this with one of my other friends on the phone and having basically what felt exactly like very similar to an MDMA journey in my own self. Even the kind of biochemistry of when you take MDMA and what occurs, to the point that I had to kind of create a landing experience from quote unquote the medicine. So that was rad. And it was all I called up. And like in that one, I went into my bloodline and into ancestral knowledge that was manifesting as pain in my body. So I started by going to the body sensation and then going deeper and deeper into consciousness and finding like this body memory that's like genetic is what I would make up. And again, in this podcast right now, I'm not going to filter or apologize for any of how crazy some of this sounds, because that's not of service to me or you listening. But I totally honor that whoever listens to this can make up whatever they want about what they hear. And move the feelings. And it's basically like deeper persona work where you realize like, I'm not just going into a memory, like I can bring my awareness to all kinds of places and then bring up the feelings around that time and place and transmute it, really is what I think we're doing. So that led to then astrologically, you probably already know this, Venus squared Saturn Friday night, conjunct.
Yeah, conjunct. They're all in the same sign, I think, now. if you're looking at whole sign, or depends if you're tropical, but yeah, they're all piling up on top of each other. So Venus has been getting closer and closer to Saturn.
But specifically Friday night, Saturday was like this really tight, I guess, like angle.
Imagine the conjunction. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got really triggered. You know, and we've talked a little bit about this, like something that Beth and I both share is like a deep love for people in our life that is not necessarily reciprocal, I guess, to oversimplify it for this moment. And I got really triggered by a situation from that. And the next morning was in just this state of like deep victimhood, very young, just like overwhelmed. And then this other resistance and like anger that's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why do you care about this person so much? Like, why do you get like this? Like, why do you love like this? Like, I must be doing something wrong. I must be doing life wrong. There must be something wrong with me that I keep having this suffering experience. So I really wanted to explore that, and an experience I'm having like in a really intense way that I haven't had in the past is when I ask the universe a question, I get answers really quickly, and really complex and beautiful answers in really beautiful ways.
But
Which
can
is
I on that? What does it feel like? What is happening when you say you receive answers? Does something happen in your life that's an answer, or is it information that you feel like you're getting a download about, or
it's
like
both? It's both. It's been more like kind of like direct downloads, or it's exactly like the experience of before you take, you know, a medicine, like an actual drug medicine, you set an intention, right? But even we could say this for Advil. Like you want your headache to go away and you take that medicine and it supports the intention. So it's like, and we don't know often, like, you know, we're not analyzing our chemicalization around that Advil or what exactly is happening cognitively when we take mushrooms. Something occurs and we can't always explain. And that's what I love about even watching someone do medicine is like they set this intention and then all these random things happen in their journey. And later you're like, wow, that was exactly what they needed. And I never could have orchestrated. Like it's that type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is now really bringing me to the awareness that we are always like love, the energy of love as we, not that we understand it, but as it is always is the medicine that's always occurring in life and connected to all of these astrological changes and this like multidimensional universe where it's like a grid where everything is interlocking and this energy is kind of the field that surrounds it. And when we take a pill, it just takes away our screens and filters so that we can more highly perceive what's always happening. And so that's what's made me like, well, I want to be that way without medicine. I want to have that experience without medicine. I want the medicine to help me get there and help me see what's possible, but then I don't want to be dependent on it too. You know? So yeah, so I'm asking all these questions, but from like a really like pouty little kid place, like, what the fuck, universe? Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't understand. I hate the way that I am. Like, why did you make me this way? Why does this person like actions have so much control and power over my experience? And yeah, that feels so real still a little bit. So end up getting on the phone with them. Like, it wasn't bad. Like I expressed what I needed to express, which is also part of the medicine. They expressed what they needed to express. But I was like in the gutter, which is probably something I'll say a lot on here. Like I can go to the highest, some really high, cool places in consciousness, and I can go to the gutter of consciousness. And those are both places I live. And I was there for luckily much shorter time than in the past, but like a full day of like, can't get out of bed. Like, you know, just deep in it. What someone might call depression.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say, yeah, if someone wanted to try on what you mean by that in the dark place, is that what you mean? Like what someone might call depression, but like maybe like an acute kind of severe depression that lasts for a day or so.
Yeah. I think like for some people it might manifest as suicidal ideation. I think for some people it might manifest as like deep hatred or contempt.
We've talked about this. Mine's kind of a flatness where I think usually I have so much, just so much enjoyment. Like there's so many things I get so excited about and love so much, and it goes away and I feel flat. And then I'm like, it's not like I actually think about acting and killing myself, but it's just like, what's the point? Like when nothing's precious, then I'm just like, it doesn't matter if I live or if anyone else lives. Like,
it's nihilism.
Yes. That's what mine looks like. It's much more subtle.
That's that 5, the 5 manifests like that.
The shutdown. Yeah.
Yeah. Just going back to trying to find where I was in consciousness. So, I wanted to say that another side note, which is going to happen a lot because I'm not trying to be sequential. I'm just streaming. What I'm recognizing is like, just like I believe that like flowers and trees are experiencing like pure ecstasy and bliss and love. Mm-hmm. And as a result, like completely worship Mother Earth, and I believe that what they're connected to, the same energy that allows them to grow and bloom, is the energy that is alchemizing us every day. Like we are actually new every single day. I think we're shedding and we're becoming like a new being, not, in these titrated, like tiny, beautiful ways. I think it's connected to even like the dimensions of reality past the stars, but the stars are part of like channeling that, which is why astrology, we can like map and predict some of the ways that that alchemy will occur. And what I'm recognizing is if I'm one with the heartbeat of the universe and my nature is with nature, which is one of my favorite quotes from Joseph Campbell, then I'm like a flower where like some days I'm shedding leaves and other days I'm like parts of me are dying. And, there's these life and death cycles, right? That is just a constant part of who we are. So when I pathologize my death cycles, it really creates like, and tell myself the story or believe stories that are told to me that it means I need medication, that it needs, X thing. I really do a disservice to my own unwinding and my own healing, because today I'm like, thank fucking God I was in the gutter yesterday, because what I saw and felt in the gutter and what has alchemized to what I have experienced today, like couldn't have been done without that. It's like going in the mud and the guck for like the beauty to come out. And I just went to bed being like, I just hope something shifts tomorrow, because I can tell this is really out of my control in terms of like what's happening.
I like what you said about the decay and if you think about sun sign astrology and the seasons, like in the fall, I think Scorpio is, and now I'm like pretty new into astrology, so I might be getting this wrong, so the experts can let us know, but it's like the season around death and dying and decay. Like it's when all the leaves fall and everything starts to die. But if you think about the moon, which arguably has like a very potent, like women's fertility cycles, the tides, like there's so much of the imprint of the energy on the moon that you can actually see and feel. All my entire family is filled with nurses. Talk to any of them and talk about what it's like in the ER when there's a full moon, and it's wacky. And so the moon's in every sign for 2.5 days. So every month the moon would be in Scorpio for 2.5 days, which might align for some people with that kind of stuff. And we kind of take, like all of us collectively sort of take on the cycles that are happening celestially, is the idea.
Yeah. I was thinking today, like how many times have I been like, maybe this is because I'm at this stage of my period process, or maybe this is because of something I ate, or, trying. And I'm like, what if it's just like me being in flow with the whole universe And I don't have a lot of control over that. I have control how I experience it or the stories I make up about it or how I treat people. But what I'm experiencing is my body, the more layers, the more I do this conscious work of consciousness and go into the places where, and again, I'm oversimplifying a lot of things as I understand them just to explain them. But as I go in the places of consciousness where love is blocked or the energy of love is not fully flowing, and I integrate those parts, I feel like my body is this energetic balloon. Like it's not just my body, like I am an energetic field. It's kind of like, well, what if I'm a cell in the body of life? And that like without all these layers of like clothing and beliefs and whatever, like I'm just a cell floating, and sometimes I connect to other cells and we overlap and I feel them, and sometimes I can feel what's in the blood of the body, and sometimes I can, and if the body is running, then my cellular experience is different than when the body is still and at rest. And how like when we
And
say
that's
like
a choice you're making though, like to go, because I hear you, I mean, you've come into my field. We've been on the phone, and I was in the middle of like, it was like the day after a breakup, and you came into my field and I felt you, but that was a choice that you're making. Are you also saying that like outside of you intentionally choosing to go in someone's field, that you're just kind of feeling
that we're in the field of the earth, that the earth has a field and none of us are separate from that field. And that even I think that I can go into a lot of people's fields, and that's been coming up as like, when I was younger, I think people entered my field because I didn't know energetic boundaries is something I'm learning a lot about. And also consent. That was something that came up today, was being consensual when entering other people's fields, and ways that what I'm trying to move towards is that I journeyed myself again today, and some other things happened. And in that journey, one of the things was like that, like in my son, that when he was young, I entered his field before he had boundaries, and it's like impacted him in different ways, and impacted how he is with himself and how he is with me, because it was sooner than he was ready for. It was too intrusive, and it impacted his ability to create his own inner boundaries, energetic boundary system. And what I was saying with the body stuff is like, we do all this stuff around emotional fluency and body sensations. And I'm really becoming aware that like, this stuff is like a fucking GPS. Like when you feel stuff in your body, it is a GPS to like so many other things that are happening in individual consciousness as well as collective consciousness, because those things are not separate. Because even though you might be a cell and I might be a cell, and we're both in Earth's field, and I can't always be in your field. We're both in the field of the earth or the field of the body, whatever you want to call it. So when the body runs, we're all impacted, but based on the kind of cell we are, based on what part of the body we're in, we're impacted differently in our response to what's happening. And I just think that's like some really beautiful shit, to be honest. And so, but there's also like a way that my body system feels like its perception of control. I keep having to die to this perception of control that I have. And a lot of these stories and ways I beat myself up, right, is like believing I can control parts of myself that are either naturally who I am or part of this bigger collective system. Like it would be almost like the earth getting mad at itself for like snowing and like, or like losing leaves during the fall. It's like, that's just part of the process.
Well, it's like the core of non-duality. It's like we are in a body and we do have an experience, and there is stuff that's actually happening here, and at the same time we're not, and we all are interconnected, and we have access to that oneness as well. Probably most people in their evolution are just more aware of their own egoic or even just body experience than the global experience or the collective experience. But it sounds like you're really playing with and experiencing more of these, like having these experiences in more of the collective, and that's kind of what's making more.
Well, I'm tracking the astrology and then my sign and like where I am in and where I was born, and kind of like where I am in the grid of life, and how like when these things, you know, it's like I almost think like a puppeteer, like when planets move, if I'm over here in the grid, I might get moved over here. If you're over here, might get moved over there. And just recognizing like, oh, this is just a part of being a part of this collective experience.
It is pretty trippy. Like, so Lauryn and I are just born a couple days apart. And it is pretty crazy how similar our experiences are. Like, we both have a partner on partner, whatever you want to call it. I'm not involved with that person at this moment, at least not, you know, energetically and on a soul
third dimension reality.
Yeah, on a soul level, will always be. But there was a period like a little over a year ago where we both stopped talking, like had a no communication period, which was the exact same period, but we didn't talk about it. It was just happening at the exact same time. And even how it ended just happened. And it was like within a day or so, like the exact same period, these years long people that we're kind of dealing with, we were like not talking to them for all the different reasons. Or, I mean, I feel like that keeps happening. We keep having these things where, and maybe it has something to do with the fact that a lot of planets were in similar positions when we were born. And so,
yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. Like I do think, and I think that's kind of one of the things that we are to learn and see together, and why we're both being kind of pulled into astrology right now. Because I think that part of moving into the age of Aquarius is that we have access to things and parts of reality, and we're more open to parts of reality that and non-reality, non-dual reality that we have kind of X'd out as a culture. And astrology being one of those things that we put in the box of like bullshit, but like, or, you know, hippies or witches or something. Whereas like, you know, there's a time on the planet where it was like math, you know, like you would learn it in school, like the way you would learn math.
When I started looking at astrology, my and your experience being similar was like something I was definitely noticing. All I really knew about was sun sign astrology. And then a couple of people just met me and they were like, oh, like within the 10 minutes of meeting me. And they're like, are you a Leo? And I'm like, what? Like, how does someone, like, what are you picking up on that? Right. So I got really curious. And this is like less than a year ago, actually. But I was like, okay, this is going to be hippies and witches and spiritual, this, that. And then I got into the community. And while there are a lot of people who are true poets, and I mean, really brilliant, it's actually history and tracking more than anything else. It's just correlating events. So it's more like a science. It is a science, like a historically based science of mapping the correlations of celestial positions and planetary events. It's nerds. It is huge nerds who are pretty arty and like soulful and can actually, most of the people in the community are able to speak with so much beauty about all of it, but it's more work. It's you know, versus left brain, right brain. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's science, and it's the oldest science we have. It's what then all these individual cultures that were spread out all over the planet were all doing their own versions of astrology before anyone was talking to each other. So it's thousands of years science. And then and then like, in order to be a doctor or a healer, astrology was a part of it, like medical astrology and using astrology as far as medicine way back in like Hellenistic times, like those were linked together and then they became separate at some point. And then of course, like totally removed as a legitimate science at whatever other point. But yeah, man, it's science, it's math. And that blew my mind about it, really.
Yeah. I mean, there's this resonance in my body of what's coming up is that like what we call like white dominant patriarchal Christian consciousness is like a time in history where we got whitewashed like energetically and put into a place of denial. And that it was, you know, for all the horrific things that have occurred in third dimensional reality at a level of consciousness, there was something in service of our evolution to be so cut off from our deepest wisdom and our deepest knowing. Like, I really believe that shit in the Bible, people coming back alive, that shit happened. They were writing about stuff that was happening because they were like things were normalized and accepted, and there weren't stories and beliefs and things that like locked your brain out of that possibility, because that's all it is. If you can't imagine a possibility, you can't access it. So if you're raised in a culture that tells you like there's one God that looks like this, and this is how you're supposed to be, and like that's the devil, and this is that, you're not even going to explore it to find out if it's possible or true, right? Like, and so even this process of like, I open my day with an altar, like on an altar, and you know, I'm connecting to like, what are the indigenous practices that live in my blood from you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago? Like what is still living inside of me?
It's like so many, you know, so many different, what's the right word? Wow, I'm forgetting my Christian roots, denominations of Christianity, you know, just don't know what to do with all of that otherworldly stuff, because we're living in this like narrow sort of like, we're not accessing it all the time. It's not like magic and stuff, and like miracles is like a part of our life here. So many different denominations just kind of chalk it up to metaphor, so they can just kind of write it off, so they don't have to kind of deal with it, which I think is part of what fundamentally I was like, something doesn't make sense. Like something I could, as you say, I could feel the bullshit. And then, you know, now thinking about scripture and thinking about my experience now with all the, you know, otherworldly, strange, atypical, not a, you know, like not, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, because sometimes it feels more real than the real, where you don't access or acknowledge any of these things happening. You know, these correlations, these interconnected experiences. It's like, and I think what you're saying about astrology and everything being cut off for a little while, I was like, some of the most powerful things in my life right now, where I feel like I'm waking up to the most stuff. And when I say waking up, I mean seeing reality more clearly, and like a fuller experience of reality, which is sort of what you're pointing at, of actually being able to imagine and access more possibilities. Psychedelics, which because they got basically shut down, no research could be done on it. It's like the only group of pharmaceuticals that we did no research on for like 40 years. And now, thank God, we're doing a lot
of question mark.
And astrology too. It went like out of popular practice, you know, in the 60s and 70s, it was more common, and it kind of went away. And so there's really something about this day and age, like even the fact that I just started learning about astrology earlier this year, but now I can listen to the Chris Brown podcast, and like even just on Twitter, just following astrologers on Twitter, you learn so much so fast. Like we have so much access to rapid information, and then we have all this rapid access through experiences with psychedelics, or even just the amount of people that we can connect with all the time and learn from, because we have Zoom and podcasts and email and the internet and all the stuff that even 20 years ago, you know, is so different. It's like a rapid evolution time, as far as, awareness and experience and consciousness and everything else. And all that stuff in the Bible now, I'm like, no, I'm kind of like you. I'm like, that sounds like maybe that's just literally what.
Like the irony is a lot of things in the Bible feel more true, but at the same time, I'm not going to like, you know, just like every book I read, I find truth in, you know, like it's, And one of the messages that came today is like anything in third dimensional reality already exists in like this really extremely more complex and intelligent way. And so like when I ask a question, how do I get the answer? Like, it's like Googling something, you know, how like you write the question, like, I'm trying to think of something I Googled recently, or like, you know, you ask the question, you type it in and you get certain answers and you're like, oh, I don't think I asked the right question. So then you delete it and then you ask a more specific question and then more things come and then you click on some links. And then like, I believe that like there's a cosmic intelligence where all the answers exist, that we can always ask and receive the answers and download them. And the caveat is they're expressed to you at the level of consciousness and awareness that you can perceive them, you know, like even this fact that like all dimensions of consciousness at a certain level function through geometry and math. Like the more math you know, the deeper you understand physics, you can perceive and translate those downloads in a way that like I can't, you know? So sometimes when I download things, I have to try to explain them in ways that are limited to the body of knowledge that lives in this body. And sometimes when I think I'm really, really channeling, it's actually just skips over the personality of Lauryn and is just like, here's what's true, you know?
Do you think that the body can actually access that much deeper knowing, and it's just sometimes that maybe our minds are not in a place to make sense of it or understand it?
Oh my God. I think that our bodies are the most advanced, most gorgeous technology that has ever existed in time and space. I would say it like that. Like it is perceiving and translating so many different energies and like, you know, on a television, you know, you have Netflix and you're streaming that, or you're streaming Hulu. There's all these different channels that you could be accessing. Like your body is streaming so many channels all the time. Your emotional channel, your biochemical channel, the channels of like astrological consciousness, the cycles of nature, the moon cycles, you know, it is picking up on all of those things and it is alchemizing them all the time in all these different ways, your memories, your thoughts. And so, and all of that is going into kind of like one big energetic experience that we say is who we are.
I get floored. So I receive somatic experience therapy pretty much weekly by Kathy Latner. Shout out. She's awesome. I love her so much. But I'm also becoming a practitioner of it. So I'm in the class and it's like a 3-year program. So I'm in this program most of the way through the first year. And every session kind of opens up, like you come in with whatever's there, and the way that the body, just staying with the body, weaves together it is crazy. Like someone will present with something and they'll say something and they're like, okay, well I'm kind of feeling like this. And then by the time we just stay with the body and that energy, by the time we get to the end, it's so obvious what was trying to happen at the beginning of the session. And they're like, holy moly.
Just like medicine work.
It is exactly like medicine work. It's exactly like medicine work.
It's all medicine work. Medicine work.
It's true. It's true. And the synchronicity and you know, skeptics, I have my own internal skepticism too, but doing that for more than a year now with like a devoted practice, and now I even just do it with myself when stuff's happening, my nervous system is different because I'm listening. I wouldn't say that.
And then even what you call your nervous system is the whole energetic experience that your body is manifesting. As a result, it's attunement to all of the energies that are coming through it.
And I wouldn't think about it before this conversation, or I didn't, but sort of what you're saying about entering people's experiences or energies or spaces or coming into somebody's field, when I'm supporting somebody, like when I'm practicing SE on somebody and they're describing what's happening in their body, I would have said, oh, I'm imagining it, but
it's your medicine. That is your medicine.
Like I'm doing it over here. And
that's why you track people's faces and you're like, you were doing this, like you breathed 2 times and then you blinked once. Like you always do that when we're in groups and stuff. And I'm like, shit, she's tracking some shit over there.
Yeah, I am tracking that stuff and I'm trying it on. I'm like trying on each thing to be like, which things
That's exactly what I do. But mine is the field, and like I'm feeling like these different energies that then get kind of personified back to me. But I think it probably was bred out of the same thing, which, you know, one, where we were astrologically when we were born and what we were called to do. But then in our environment, like we tracked for survival. Like we had to track every micro expression of our families to stay safe emotionally. And I think that we picked up on a tune to so many people at like this micro needling level, basically. So we're just tracking like 20 times. Like if when I see somebody, some part of my brain is tracking every single persona in like a 1 minute conversation. My subconscious mind is tracking like, oh, I just saw 4 different energies of the same person. Yeah. That person. Yeah. And you're tracking like all their different body movements and your body system is like coming up with some kind of explanation that you've tracked in so many people because you've been doing it for 38 years. That it's like every time I see someone do that, my body, this is, you know what I mean? It reinforces in your body like fear or anger or sadness or compassion. And you're like, oh, that's what this is.
I've been just recently kind of like here and there going below the line and triggering myself around superpowers, around psychic abilities and stuff or just maybe making myself small because like me and you were in a circle this week and one of these things you're talking about going in someone's memory and describing it like that happened. And I'm like, this shit happens all the time with her. Like, I'm just like, yeah, this is what she does. You've done it to me. Like we've co-created all these experiences of your powers. And even like my friend Mia, who's going to be on the podcast soon, I've went to her for Reiki recently, and she doesn't just do energetic Reiki. She gets a lot of messages. She's channeling all these messages for that person when she's in their field. So she writes everything down, makes all these notes, and then you get your Reiki, and then you sit and you get your messages. And I'm always kind of like, and I was on my astrology like tutoring. I'm learning from Drew Levante. Hi, he's the best. But we were looking at my chart, and my Pluto and Saturn are in my 12th house in Libra. And I was talking about some entanglement stuff that's happened to me with my, I don't know what to call him, my co-pilot that I'm not talking to right now.
That we're not piloting together right now.
We're piloting separate. We're working for different airlines. But like, and he's like, yeah, or maybe you're just psychic. And I was like, and I kind of was like, well, maybe I'm just a baby. Maybe I'm just at the very beginning of blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm like, they know how to do that weird stuff. And I know all these, mostly women, I'm trying to think right now of guys, but like, I'm in a sacred circle of women who fucking know what's going on. Like they have all, like my friend Carolyn, all these people have these real powers that I Diana Chapman, like there's so many people. And I was like, oh, I don't really know how to do that. So like with you kind of reflecting back to me some of the places where I can and have been sort of tuning into that. It's kind of fun to think about because I guess my story is everybody has access to that, and it's just how available you make yourself to it, and probably also how much you are willing to practice being wrong and making stuff up and just like, playing with it, I guess, as you start to kind of tune in more to your own individual flavor of access to that oneness, that broader field, the earth field, whatever intelligence, whatever the hell's going on here, whatever this is, as you tune into it. But my story is that, actually, I will take that back. My 2 boys, especially Finn, or at least Finn, he's 3 years older, so I have a better sense of it. I feel like he is a healer for sure and has some psychic energy. When I had my second boy, Parker, so I was, Finn was 2.5. While I was pregnant, I had colon cancer, for anyone that doesn't know that yet. And so it was right at the junction of my small and large intestine. And so Finn was like 2.5 years old. I had the baby, couldn't do surgery or do a colonoscopy or anything while I was pregnant. So I had the baby 2 weeks later. I went in, had a colonoscopy. They found a huge tumor. And so I think like 2 weeks later, I had major abdominal surgery and had all this stuff taken out. And within a month of that, Finn got intussusception. Have you heard of that? It's when your intestine kind of like envelopes on top of itself and it creates a blockage. It's very painful. It feels probably similar to, not to say that contractions are painful, but a child would feel like that amount of pressure every time, like every time they, like, it's called peristalsis, moves through your intestines like every 12 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. So he was screaming. It was really scary. We brought him to the hospital and they did an ultrasound, and he had this intussusception, this part of his intestine that kind of knotted up, basically causing an obstruction. I mean, kids used to die from this. You know, you would die within a couple of days because it would cause a complete block in the exact same place as where my cancer, the exact same place. So within a month of my system having all this disruption in that same place, Finn's system was mimicking it. And it's like,
well, now we have the answer to what happened earlier, which means you can't edit it out of the podcast. He's entangled in your field.
Both of these kids really, really are.
And I don't know, like, that's what I'm playing with too, is like, there's different ways to be entangled in different reasons. And I think there are, like, I'm learning in the energetic space, like what is right relationship, I guess, with other people's fields. Right. And so when like you're with them and your field is in presence, their field is in presence because they're vibrationally and energetically creating some kind of homeostasis with your field. When you leave, I would make up that it's triggering in their field an energetic experience of energetic abandonment, or, you know, that they can't fully explain. And then they act out, or they do different things, or create situations, or create anxiety in themselves. Like there's an energetic experience that is created from that separation, especially because we do, and you know about this in somatics, like we use other people to calm our nervous system. And that's by design, which is really getting into what I want to say about healing the collective, because that's coming through really loud. Like it's the same with our energy fields, like, and we can become over dependent on that field, especially if like love is scarce, right? And if that type of a field is scarce. So if all the fields around you, it's super loud over here, sorry. If all the fields around you are anxiety provoking and fear based, and that's like the vibrational energy that you're normally matched with, and then you feel an energetic vibration of joy or love, even for 10 minutes, right? There's a way that you can be like, oh my God, there's a different vibration. And then this vibration, the fear and suffering, becomes even more like you can't stand to be in it, right? And so if like in their life, you're one of the only places that they experience that, and that's the only way they know how to find that homeostasis in their nervous system, then they're going to become dependent on you and where you are, and where you are is going to affect where they are. So right in that model, it would make sense that it's a both and. There's a certain, I think even as parents, where there's a responsibility we have to help settle nervous systems, you know, infants and all these different times. And then we slowly want to teach them to settle their own, right? And to become aware of that.
Yeah, and to understand more about how to self-regulate or, ground themselves and resource themselves. We call it resourcing. Like we can use other people to resource. You can use a pet to resource. You can use something tactile that feels really nice. You know, you can use all kinds of things. You can use the earth, the ground, get outside, walk around barefoot, like get out in nature. These are all ways that we can resource ourselves, our own nervous system, and maybe what you would call vibration.
That's what the universe is answering one of the questions I asked today, which is like, with this person that I love so much, like, why is their energy field so valuable to me? And so I just got that answer. But also with Talon, when I was doing this journey today, again, no medicine at all. It showed me that like when he was little, I would be in his field and I would know what he's thinking or feeling before he knew it. And I would speak it to him. So he became dependent on me to tell him how he thought or felt. And he isn't self-reflecting, or he's actually getting overwhelmed And also, I think it was so intrusive too at the same time. So when we have a conversation, there's some kind of like, whether it's about a choice he made or anything that's going to be kind of a flag for intimacy, you can feel his system shut down almost like it's a trauma. And he kind of like blanks out. And I already know that this is the case with like mothers who, one thing I was really careful about was like around mothers who are like too emotionally dependent on their kids, right? So they share their emotions inappropriately, and that feels like a weight to their boys. Like I was tracking that. I never considered that, you know, kind of pushing him too hard about his self-reflection or naming all these things I was feeling that he wasn't even ready to comprehend yet could be another way of being like intrusive to his system. And just also allowing the grief of that, because of course we don't want to, you know, and just how many times over my life that I can track that somebody felt intruded upon around just being with me, and I didn't understand that. Or I used to interview teachers, and it was like clockwork. Every interview they would start crying for no reason. They would say, I don't know, I have no idea why I'm crying, I'm so sorry. Like, so I'm learning like this is a medicine, that this is my particular medicine as Lauryn, my version. But then going back to what you're saying, what I'm starting to believe about healing the collective is like, one, the collective's always healing and changing and growing just like a body. So when you download it in that journey, like nothing needs to heal at one level of awareness, that's true. Right. Yeah. But then we're in duality, and there's always the opposite, which we have to honor both. Right. But like for me, what I'm recognizing is healing the collective is liberating individuals, communities, and systems back to their homeostasis, like that natural rhythm of their system. And because those systems are coordinating all the time. And when we are perceiving that from love, like only beautiful things happen. That's why in conscious leadership circles, all that shit is so, you know, the things that we've done together are so amazing because we were perceiving each other through the dimension and the reality of love. And each of us were starting to bring our own medicine, the unique medicine that each of us are, to the medicine journey that is life that's always occurring. Yeah. And so when I'm aware of that, I fucking am like, life and the alchemy and the mathematics and the balancing of equations that's happening with human beings in relationship is actually so fucking beautiful when it's perceived through the eyes of love. And it's so painful and debilitating, you know, when I'm in a different vibration of experience, which is why I wanted to talk to you, because I'm having all these like ahas about this relationship with this man that I love. And how like beautiful the balancing of equations is, even in my pain. And so this morning I had a circle with some of our friends, our mutual friends. It's like a casual circle that we call it the Yummy Temple. They know who they are. And
I'm making up who's in this group right now.
Yeah, make it up
for myself. Great.
Yeah, so there's two people in there that are married, and they had an issue with their daughter. And we don't really have like an agenda per se, but that's where we started. Speaking of my little angel, he's in the kitchen right now, making some noise. Thanks.
Hi, Taylor.
So she started, well, let me back up. The leader was the wife, and she started with a meditation where she had us sit at the table with our personas, and our X'd out personas. And I brought to the table all of the ones that I had been so triggered about the day before. The one that's like, oh my God, I love you so much, I would do anything for you. The one that's like, you know, why don't you see me? The one that's like, all I know is heartbreak. The one that's like, why do I miss you and I long for you? And why does it feel this way in my body? Like, why do I feel like I need you? And then I'm sitting there and I could feel like it's the big L, Lauryn, which is like a higher self version, not the triggered enactment version. She's sitting at the head of the table, and that's all she could really do. She couldn't like be compassionate. She could just like sit there and hold that they were with her. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the table in the visualization was like all these people who trigger me, who I experience as having traits of narcissism, sociopathy, etc. And I've been exploring this continuum of narcissism to codependence for quite a while. I'm very curious and interested about that. And something I really
so much with some of my friends right now, actually. Paul's another dude who has real abilities, but we've been talking about, do you know much about this? I've been like getting into some YouTube.
Don't tell me anything, because I want to say what I've been exploring, and then you can just tell me if like someone's already done this exploration. But it's very helpful to me. Okay. Because I can see that they're two sides of the same coin to a certain extent, right? Because especially in duality, that's always true. And then my mentor is like her past is in trauma, and she's dealt with sociopathy and narcissism, and like deep mental illness is like her strength area, right? Yeah. And like I watch her hold space for shit that I'm like, I can't even believe that's a thing you can hold space for. Right. But of course, then I like aspire to that because I want to hold space for shit like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's part of why we are together in this walk right now. So on this left side was like all these people, personas, but they show up as people, right? And they're personas and people in my life that are really triggering, that are on the opposite side and like hate the left side of like needy, blah, blah, blah. And then I was thinking, like, through this process and this alchemy of this conversation about their daughter, so many beautiful things happened. It was totally people as medicine. Mm-hmm. And because everyone's stuff came up, right, as a result of them sharing about their daughter. And they think they're taking up too much space. And we're all having and like meeting it in the constellation, like at the perfect place for where we are.
I guess, yeah, I love it. I love when that's happening.
Right.
I mean, it's always happening.
It's always happening. But when you perceive it, you're like, oh, the universe really is smarter than me. You're like, oh, really? Actually, everything is for my good. Like, oh, and really like the medicine and the gift and the help that I need is always here whenever I ask for it. And it's really that simple. And I love that experience of groups. And so I realized, because the whole thing that she set up for us as the beautiful container was our XAP personas. And I'm like, these sociopathic narcissistic personas must be in me, or I would not keep creating them to beat the shit out of these really sad, pathetic ones. And I can hear the voice in me that is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the whatever. And somebody asked me, they go, I said, you know, if there was a little kid, or Taylin, my son, if he came to me and he was 3 or 4 and he's like, I love you so much. Like, I love you so much. It like hurts. I don't even know, mommy. I just love you so much. Like, please never leave me. I wouldn't be like, shut the fuck up. What is wrong with you? Some people might do that. I wouldn't. Right. I could hold compassion for that. And those are the ages. And when I went in, I'm like, I was loving and feeling and perceiving love really, really big, really, really young. And when I wanted it to be mirrored, it was mirrored by this sociopathic, like, I can't feel my feelings. I can't hold this. It's too much. I'm going to push this away. So I keep creating that in my experience. And like, so there's so many complexities to that, right? But then I started thinking more about this, because what I ask myself all the time, the way I feel if everything is for me and the universe is so intelligent, then nothing is not as it should be. So why are there narcissism and codependence? It can't be this whole thing that people say of like, well, you know, they're toxic. You need to cut them out of your life. Like, I'm like, there's something off with that. They're toxic. You also have to be somewhat toxic. Like, it's just not that simple. Like, it has to be, you know what I'm saying? And so, and all these people on the narcissistic side, I love them. Most of them I love. Some of them I don't. But the people who trigger me, who represent these personas, I love them. and I don't really fully understand them. And I've been trying to be like, where are they coming from? And so what I saw on the spectrum is like on the narcissism side, like when the story I can make up is that we're always perceiving love, especially when we're babies. And that either there's an experience of neglect or something where love is more than the nervous system, then love feels painful. Just like in heartbreak, I believe heartbreak is an expansion of how much love we can hold, but it hurts. It actually aches our body to expand to a new dimension of love.
Yeah. Martin Purcell talks about that, like grief, grief and praise. Deb sent me a talk of his where he's basically saying that in his, it's like grief allows us to feel all of the love and beauty. Like we wouldn't be grieving if it wasn't so beautiful and important and deep and meaningful and connected. Like they're intimately connected, and some people can't feel one because they can't feel the other, and that you can't really feel praise and love if you don't have a relationship with grief, and you can't open yourself to grief. You won't feel love as deeply.
Well, and the way that I experience it is that like the energy of love is so big that the nervous system, like that feeling we call grief or the feeling we call heartbreak, is the reaction of the nervous system to perceiving how big that energy is, or a bigger level of that energy. And it feels so big that the nervous system is almost having the experience of like, this is too much, actually. I don't know if I can fully hold it. And it has to learn how to hold a new level.
That's what SC therapy is about. Expanding capacity for how much you can experience within a normal range. Totally. And expanding that over time.
They're all just medicines and technologies of like, and so back to the continuum piece is like, what I make up is that if you're on the spectrum of like, you know what, I can cut people off in a heartbeat, like fuck, this, or I'm great by myself, I don't need anybody, or like I destroy people because I'm so powerful, or I'm trying to think, like I'm never going to let you hurt me, or like, or I'm controlling, manipulative, whatever it might be. Like at some point in your consciousness made the decision that love is painful and it's vulnerable, and you created all of these different experiences and coping mechanisms to make sure that the energy of love did not enter. Or it wasn't something you could perceive. I don't actually think we can separate from it entering, but you perceive, like, I don't want to perceive that, and I don't want to experience it. And if I start to experience love, and I'm talking about not like romantic love, I'm talking about the energy that destroys anything that's not true. Like, I don't know how else to say it. There's just this other thing.
That can even just be connection, though. That can just be intimacy too. I mean, in a romantic or not romantic, just the power of connecting to another soul.
There's something about the allness. It's like, I see it in people. And what I see is like when people start to get injected with truth or get injected with love and their set point is low, there's a huge disruption, and there's mostly like a big nervous system reaction. Yeah. On both sides of the spectrum, but it just looks different. On the other side of the spectrum, I see that like you and I, we fall on the codependency side. We really, I don't think we enjoy it often.
I have like something to say about that, but I want to let you finish because I've had a couple thoughts here I want to follow up on afterwards, but keep going.
So on that side, it's like love is scarce. So the story I make up is on that side of the continuum. And again, I'm oversimplifying, but it was like we perceived how beautiful and how amazing love was, but we got it in these tiny little titrated bits or whatever. It was like really withheld from us. Mm-hmm. And so when it gets dropped, we're like, oh, there it is again. I got to hold on to it. I can never let it go. Oh my God. There's this scarcity consciousness, and those little ones that were really actually desperate for that experience, like come online and are like reorganizing to try to get another hit or whatever of something that we actually all really are deeply supported by perceiving.
My therapist says my little girl, and in particular with this friendship, this relationship, that my little girl was like getting something that was really, really important that I didn't get when I was a kid, to whatever extent I perceived that I needed it. And so I was just dealing with all of this stuff around it because this little girl just needed this stuff so much. And that's codependency in a nutshell. It is like skipping over a ton of stuff or having a super high tolerance for a bunch of stuff that isn't balanced because you have such deep scarcity about like this thing you're trying to get and you're trying to get it back. And when you think it's going away, you overcompensate, which actually drives that person even further away. I mean, the thing about narcissists and empaths, which, might be another word for
that was the next thing I was going to bring up. That's the next thing.
Well, go ahead if you want to give me
So back to my thing of like, everything is forced. And I'm channeling my mentor right now, who is like, oh my God, well, she'll be on here, so we'll hear her. But she's like, everything is an evolutionary bid. Like nothing is bad. Nothing is wrong. Like if you keep cycling through this, like it's important, it's valuable, it's, and like, so when we are in a pattern of codependency or in a pattern of narcissism, if we can get to a place of awareness to observe that pattern and to recognize that, like, and have so much self-compassion, for the fact, like the parts of us that were created and designed those coping mechanisms for us around something that we absolutely want and need to perceive, or would like, we could have such a different experience of reality if we did perceive it. It's so of service to us, and that part of us, like when I saw myself today as those little people, and I saw myself also as the narcissist and the pathological, and recognized they're both in me. I cannot project them out if they are not both in me. And they have to come to some kind of agreement. They have to both put down some of their things and come to the table. I'm like, that is what's trying to happen around race. That's what's trying to happen around politics. Like, we are projecting out like all of these different parts of us onto reality for an evolutionary bid. And it is fucking healing when another human takes responsibility for that shit. It is just as healing as me going in and creating some kind of compromise between my personas. Like, it doesn't have to be all this like inner work that we do. Like, we're all connected in the grid. It's all important. And so then I was asking myself, well, like, what is the codependent, for lack of a better way to say it, above the line? What is the evolutionary bid of the codependent, and what is the evolutionary bid of the narcissist? And what came to me was that the evolutionary bid of a codependent is they are empathic, they are perceiving all that is not love, and they usually have really bad boundaries, right? So their energetic system is really exposed. They're feeling other people's energetic systems. And this superpower that I'm learning that I have, where I can go into fields and support people through their field, is actually a huge gift. That is a redirection of me love being scarce for me. And as I learn to use that skill in my body and heal, and it comes into right relationship, it's very, very of service for bringing these two polarities to a center point. And with narcissism, like, I would make up that, like, they are very connected to truth. Like, the truth that's coming through them is often like through narcissism or sociopaths or whatever. It's not coming through a filter of love, but they can see so many things. They're aware of so many things. Sometimes they speak.
What's an example?
So like a pathological experience, like let's say gaslighting as an example. It's like a pathology that we often see in narcissism. Is like they can see the truth of your weaknesses.
Like you're in your own drama and in your
You're
own
in your own
story
drama,
here,
and
it's not the
they
truth.
they're all their minds and their system is like learning how to protect themselves from your truth, or you protecting yourself from protect them from your truth, or to keep you from knowing your own truth. So it's used in this like inverted, like fucked up way from fear, because if they let your truth into them, your truth is medicine. And they know at a subconscious level that if your truth enters them and they really see you or empathize with you, something will melt the barrier that's been protecting them, and they will be weakened. And so and we could say it the same way that an empath is so intuitive, they are also very intuitive. They're also seeing a lot of the things.
Yeah, that maybe it's like I could just feel so much stuff in the relationship, and it's like not what people were saying. Like he would be like, well, it's like this and it's like this and it's like this, and it's like, it doesn't matter what you're saying about it. Like there's something else that's happening here. And it doesn't even matter what I say about it, because a lot of times I would just be like, yeah, okay, and like try to get on board with what he was saying, partially because I perceived his truth, like he
was seeing a truth.
He was seeing a truth that I knew.
And it's a truth. The story I would add to that, it's a truth that's not experienced through the wisdom and the knowing of love, right? The energy of love. And that's how it gets inverted. But if his same gift, his heart was opening and he was perceiving his awareness that's coming to him through the energy of love, the truth that I imagine would come through would be very powerful. Just like when we're feeling something energetically and we're falling apart, but we're just like, I just know it. Like we're not really in love either. We're in fear, we're in scarcity. When we perceive that same experience through love, the things that happen in the medicine, in our group or whatever happen, because we're not attached, because we can use that gift in service and as medicine.
Yeah.
And so all of this is just like, so I'm downloading all of this in the group and I'm like writing furiously. Like someone in the group was like, can you please put your pen down and just be with us? And I'm like, okay, yes. But then I get off of it and I'm like, I could feel, I'm having these intuitions now of like, go in your field. So I go in the field and all of this information started coming. Like I had to cover my face. Like, in a medicine journey, you wear whatever.
And eye
coverings. Yeah. I forget, people can't see it. And first was like this person that I love. I felt really called to enter his field. I asked permission.
You don't know. You're just literally in the field, a field. Like who are you describing right now? Like someone you know or someone you don't know?
No. I went into my field and I felt called to enter this man that I keep talking about that I love.
Oh, I see.
That's what I've decided. I'm just going to call him this man that I love so much. Okay. This is like,
I'll call my co-pilot, even though we got
the man that I just love so much. And I've been setting these intentions, like I will not cause harm. Like my intention is for healing and service. May I enter the field? And it came up really strong. I saw these memories of him young. I got all this information of him, like, and memories of him, like as an infant, then around some abuse that he had in middle school. And like, then I went in as my higher self was like with him in these memories, which this exact thing happened to me in my first journey. Some energy tapped in, which I think might've been my future self, and walked me through each of my abuse and like held my hand. And I did that exact same thing with him in these memories. And then other things started kind of, how when you're in medicine space, which again, I want to point out, I was not taking any drugs. Other things start to kind of push in, and then, your consciousness kind of gets diverted and you come back. I saw stuff with my son, like things started to come up with my son, like the stuff that I shared today, and like seeing parts of him that were overlapping. And And then I just started getting like downloads about like love and liberation and like love as medicine. And there was just it was all this like beautiful, you know how it is also after journey, you can't even really explain it all.
Yeah.
But the real gift of it was the compassion that I had for him, the man that I love. And even I see some of these kind of narcissistic traits of my son sometimes, and I can really scare myself around them. And so I've been wanting to explore, and just this like compassion for like what was going on and how their system calibrated what was happening, and how much of service, like what I saw with this man that I love was like, oh my God, like, of course that's who you became. Of course your system, thank God it protected you, because the shit you were dealing with was like unreal, you know? And to just hold that space of, okay, so then that'll be funny because maybe he'll listen to this one day, maybe he won't. So that happened from 12 o'clock to 12:30. When I'm in that space, I don't know, like I didn't know if 2 hours had passed. So then I started asking, like, how do I know when this is over? Because there's just parts that I just wanted to stay in the energy. It was so cool, you know, and I could just feel it was like fading. It was like time to come out. I come out. He texted me at like 12:05.
You said, wrong? Oh, because you were like, had your phone off while you were doing this or whatever?
Yeah, my phone's like over there. And he texted me, and he's very connected to the network and the whatever.
And we don't mean AT&T. We mean
right. He's connected to the energetic network.
Right.
And he was like, what's wrong? And I sent back a smiley face, and he's like, are you for real? He's like, I'm having a crazy experience over here. And I'm like, I was just with you. I think you're feeling that. And as is my experience with him and people that would fall into his category, his first reaction is, oh, you mean some experience you created of me?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, and I'm really, you know, I'm working on holding presence in these situations, and I felt my body contract. And I was like, that is definitely true. That could definitely be possible. And I said, but this is what I've been doing to check myself out and hold myself accountable, is I'm revealing to people what I see. And what's happening recently is they're like, well, fuck, you know? And then I feel, so I said, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this. I'm also learning that I can't share everything. I didn't even share on here. There's a lot of things I saw. There was a moment, I will share, that I saw both of our higher selves meet. Like, so I felt like what I became aware of is that there are, when we're perceiving someone's quote unquote higher self, like you and I are both energetic dimensions of consciousness. There's so many dimensions of who we are. Mm-hmm. We are perceiving a dimension that we're not experiencing in third dimensional reality. Mm-hmm. But that is existing, and that in the astral plane and other dimensions of reality outside of time and space, you can still interact. Those energetic bodies can interact. Mm-hmm. And so we had this experience, which is not new to me, but it was more vibrant than it's ever been, of meeting in an energetic reality that was outside of third dimension, mm-hmm. where I was reminded of like, this is what calls me to keep showing up in this relationship, is like this, whatever experience that we have in this other plane of reality. Which I didn't share with him. I just shared with him things that were kind of like unarguable, I guess, or wasn't. He always has, if I feel like I'm telling him or giving him feedback or whatever, there's this whole reaction. So I was like, I saw these things. He wrote back, HMM. But I made up that some of the things that I shared were matching some kind of, bless you, some kind of energetic experience that he was having, and there was some resonance, and
that's why he texted you.
Yeah. And that when I said those things back to him, there was a part of him that's like, oh, I think maybe she really was with me, which is its whole own thing, right? This is whole own thing, like coming to a place where we trust each other and we trust each other's gifts. And
I mean, I've had those types of entanglements, but it's pretty complicated for me. Like this is going back like a year ago, me and my co-pilot, the person that I do consciousness work with or have for the last couple of years, I was in an energy session with Carolyn, doing attunement therapy, and I was having like something really intense happening where I was vibrating, fully shaking. Like I felt like I was going to levitate off the table. I didn't, but I was fully vibrating, shaking. And I got out of it and I called him, and he was like, he was walking into a date or out of a date or something like that. He was going to dinner and with some woman. And I was like, something crazy just happened. And I started to talk about it. And he was tripped out because he was like, okay, like I was just fully vibrating like during the same period of time. Like it was a long thing. It was like half an hour. And that was at a point in our relationship where we were trying to figure out, like, should we be in a relationship with each other? Like what, because we had all these ups and downs, and sometimes it was really unfriendly, and we were kind of like not sure if we were going to continue. And I kind of used that as like, we should just stop pretending that we're not connected. Like we're doing something here. So let's just stop pretending like there's a choice about it, because it just is. So let's just embrace it. And like, I can see how from below the line, I can kind of use, like, I can make it so special and so precious with him that I will really be in stuff that doesn't feel good with not exactly the same commitments. Like, it's not like we're exactly committed to the same things about the relationship. I am using this to heal and to like wake up and to like undo stuff and unwind things. And he is to some extent for himself. So that's where things get kind of messy. And like, that's complicated. That's complicated for me. I like what you're saying, because I like the idea that I can still be in a conscious relationship with him, but not even necessarily talk to him. I like that idea because we really have been helping each other heal. He's been really, really supporting me on a whole bunch of stuff for like over a year plus, pretty intentionally. And I really want to hold that space for him too, but I'm not available to be in really, really close connection with him right now, or maybe ever again. I don't know in this life, but our souls are connected. And I do, when I meditate and when I drop in, like, I know that we're connected on a soul level. I know that that's always happening, but I also just am like, but don't we have access to that with everybody? Isn't there, I'm just thinking about how I make that so precious, and then I can really use that as a way that I stay in stuff and start to skip over, I guess. And I'm like, this is never going to happen with anyone. It's that same precious codependency stuff of like, this is never going to happen anywhere else. So I have to get it here because all this crazy, weird, spiritual, conscious stuff keeps happening. So, and it's like, I don't think he wants that. Like, he had a dream. This is like going a month or so back. I woke up from a crazy dream, and I called him right away, because I was like, I just had a crazy dream. And it was me and you. We were traveling in South America, and you were showing me this photo album, and there were these pictures of this blonde girl, and I described her, and the pictures were naked pictures, like this photography of this woman. And he's like, okay. It's like, and the night before, after I'd gone to sleep, this woman that he knows from South America that he's hooked up with over the years was sending him naked pictures, and they were like exactly what I was describing. And I didn't even think, I knew about the South American woman for some reason. I didn't think she was blonde, but like, I'm in this dude's space without permission. Like, he didn't ask me to be up in there. And then now I'm like activated about this. So this whole, like what you said right in the beginning about having the negative, like having the aversion to the word leaky, I'm really interested in that. And I think one of the reasons I use it is because it comes up in astrology with certain water signs and certain energies and certain planets, and this particularly in the 12th house and stuff like that. It's leaky. It's a leaky house, like this unconscious stuff. The 12th house is about the unconscious, and that's where the leakiness happens. And I'm thinking about what you said about your son and my kids and the energies and like all that kind of stuff. And
well, can I say something about that?
Yes, please.
Because I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of the leaky part. Like, this is where sex comes in.
Okay.
Because when we have sex with someone, we invite them into our field. And I do think there's like a ritual, or like there's some process to deconnecting to that. And I think that's true for everyone we've had sex with. And that was another question I asked today, was about sex and love, because as you know, like I'm really exploring like desire and ecstasy and like lust, and like I don't resonate with some things around that. And like the answer I got was sex and love are not separate things. Like the energy that you feel, that you might associate with like more like lust or whatever, and love, they're actually entwined energies that work together, but we, as in our human third dimensional experience, like separate them out, because that's what we do with everything. That's part of duality. If you can separate it, you can see it and know it, and then you put it back together. And so that the highest experience of sex is connected to love and sex together. I also had that experience of shaking in my experience. When I first met him, I shook the other night. And when we are on MDMA and we're in ecstasy, we often shake. I think that ecstasy is the perception of like those two energies at one time. I think there's all these dynamics, like what I'm guessing. And so what I'm experimenting with, like, I hear what you're saying. The only resistance I have to the way you describe it with your person is that it's all through a 3-dimensional lens. Do I believe that it's only one person? I'm also exploring and asking the universe this question about, are things special or not special? I don't have the full answers. The things that I would say today is that, one, like the higher dimensional consciousness or vibration that anyone experiences, the less often you're going to find a vibrational match or challenge to that. Like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's not impossible. And it's also not like something you're going to find every single day, which is by design, I think, in terms of like,
a lot about it. Because
right. It's scary.
I just don't know.
I do. I think it's something we'll continue to explore, both of us in our own ways and together. So there's that piece. I can imagine a vibrational experience where one thing that came through with me is like that, my pussy could take people to a lot of places, but can they take me? And that's a different thing. That there is something like, if these two vibrational frequencies that are trying to balance an equation together find love and sex and surrender, that there's actually a part of consciousness evolution wrapped up in that I don't fully understand yet either, or no. Then my other thing that I believe is that we are in constellations. And that I would even argue that, I guess I would say hypothesize, that the birth chart gets recreated in the constellation. So if the Virgo energy leaves, it's another and it's completed and the energy's cut, another Virgo energy would come in, likely, but at a different dimensional consciousness. Or you can stay with one energy, and if you're both keep upping the vibrational frequency, you're going to keep meeting and staying in the same constellation. And that's even true for you and I. Like, we're in the same constellation, and we could do a lot of things to try to not be friends, and we'd keep showing up in the constellation. Or if something happened and our vibrations really stopped matching in some way, some other kind of like Leo frequency, and I can look back on my life and see these like repetitive, which let's call them lessons. They're lessons that manifest as personifications.
And that's kind of what the birth chart is. The natal chart, it's like a map of all the lessons.
It's a map of all the lessons. And the hypothesis today I have about healing the collective is that people are each other's medicine, and relationships is how we heal the collective, period, point blank. Relationship to ourselves and relationship to the people in our constellation, and getting our lessons. And when I say healing the collective, what I mean is the more of us that will perceive love and be liberated from fear and have an experience of reality that is closer to what some would say is the fifth dimensional experience of Earth versus the third dimensional experience of Earth. And that is ascension. And that, you know, how in New Earth, he talks about heaven on earth, that's what he's pointing to. He's pointing to a tipping point that even what I think we see, I would argue what we see in Jim and Diana that we love about them is like, they've created a whole kind of like little universe where they're creating and they're experiencing reality in a way that most of us are not. And we're like, what the fuck? If that's existing, then I want some of that. And we start moving towards that. I think my only kind of like reservation, I think there's even another level of creating that, like my story would be that they control their reality and who's in it a lot. Right? They create bubbles for themselves, which allow them to hold that consciousness. And so I'm really curious about doing it in more like instead of cutting off your mom because she's so triggering to you, like what if you really use that medicine and the two of you got to a place of like love and liberation together? Like these tough, difficult, edgy relationships, the people at work or whatever, like what if more of us got committed to that work? Like what experience could more people have? Especially going back to that polarity that I talked about in the beginning, because we're going to create a polarity of our X'd out personas wherever we are.
Right.
So by really leaning into the most edgy ones, we're from a place of conscious awareness, like having the opportunity to liberate ourselves. And I make up liberate them, because when I work on a persona is integrated in me, it's no longer projected onto my reality anymore. All of a sudden that person's like nice and sweet to me or in love with me or whatever, because my lesson around that energetic entanglement was integrated.
I'm curious about how all this stacks up with a lot of the other stuff I've been learning. And like, I feel like my pattern around my co-pilot that I explore this stuff with, where we've been challenging each other on the vibration, and there's some place I go to with that. I believe what you're saying sounds true to me. And there's a place I go to in all of that where it's like, so no matter how terrible it is, no matter how bad I feel, I'm going to keep at this no matter what, because because it's about this thing. And I've been learning a lot about allowing myself to have whatever limits I'm having, and to like, and to just be real with myself about what my own capacity is. I think my capacity is very high, but it's way higher than it used to be, but there's some things I don't have the capacity for, where when I'm in those relationships and working on that stuff, at least with the person in the specific ways that we're creating it, it was just unfriendly more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's like all this love. So if we're on this side of the spectrum where we perceive a lot of love and we are like overly open to love, we actually need like really big times to ourselves to turn that energy back on ourselves, because we do give it so much away.
That's
and
like
so
the piece of feedback that I'm getting from like my people and my therapists and stuff is like, put that back on yourself. I get it from you. What if you give yourself a portion of that and turn it back on yourself?
And like, you know, like I saw this even with teachers, I saw this with students, like if for a while you're like, I can't do this with him, I need to really pull back, whatever. Right. And then you do a lot of work on yourself and you heal some of those things. The hypothesis I would test, and again, this is just Lauryn being like, what are the questions my life is here to answer? And I just want to test this shit out. Like I actually want to like try with my life and find out what feels true to me. That's where I find truth. But like what I would test, and I guess what I am testing in a different way than you are, but is like that those lessons are going to show up again. They're going to look a little bit different. You're going to be more available for them. You know, it could show up in him. It could show up in someone else, but it's going to be reliable where you're going to laugh and be like, yeah. And the reason that I have, you know, and I could make an argument for both sides, even for myself, but just the reason that I have stayed so committed well, there's so many reasons, but one reason I want to highlight is that I had only like disastrous, painful relationships from 20 years old till I hit bottom and went into a love addiction program. And I didn't have sex for 6 years. And when I say that I worked my ass off in that program, I worked my ass off. I was like really a person I was proud of. I healed a lot of shit. I did deep trauma work and I felt ready, you know? And I attracted all of the same things. He's a different combination. There's a different resilience. There's different qualities that actually, you know, if I look at it, there was a stair step, I would say. Like they all were like a upgraded version of the other. But
my therapist says, she's like, he's a slightly better version of your dad. Because we're still working that stuff
and
out.
I'm talking about every guy that I was in like a deep relationship with. And then, but he's also all of them rolled into one, like all the lessons that I didn't complete in the previous ones. And so I remember being like, I think I am just to move through this. But this time I have tools that I didn't have around like my consciousness and my awakeness and the experiential learning, because what I realized, I did most of my healing from my mind. This time the healing is coming from my body, my consciousness. And I still don't know where I'm going to land, but I know for sure, like you said, was it you I was talking to? And you're like, yeah, but you don't want to go back to that girl you were 2 years ago. Was that you?
I don't think so. Maybe
somebody I was talking to, they're like, yeah, I get it. But do you want to be that person you were 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 7 years ago? Oh, it was Abby. I'm like, no, I do not want to be her. I love who I am today as compared, like, so, and sometimes it gets too much. And sometimes I have to step away or he has to step away. And I don't know where life will take us in terms of what kind of relationship we have or how much interaction we have. But going back to kind of where we started, like when I'm in the moment that I am right now, in the place and connection I am right now, I trust life so fucking much. Like life is medicine. So I believe that whatever happens, even though I will probably fight it, or, you know, there's ways that I won't like it, or I might not like certain paths. It's like, I know whatever path it is like the best medicine for me. If it continues to be him, he's the best medicine. If it's not him,
that's the best medicine. Then.
That's the best medicine. And learning to honor that and learning to work through the parts of me that scares the shit out of them is also part of the work.
It reminds me when I was in the coaches training program, I want to say during the first year of it, because I did it twice because I'm extra. But Jim, you know, my marriage was coming apart and I wanted to get out of it. And Jim was like, you can get out. He's like, he's like, the same stuff's going to happen though. So he's like, you can sort it out here in this relationship, or you can get out of this relationship and you can deal with it in the next relationship. And I, for a long time, took that to mean that I was failing or giving up or avoiding or something by getting out of my marriage. And so I stayed in actually for some time after that, trying to change my experience to something that was working better. And ultimately I did decide to exit my marriage. And then I bumped into this next person about a year later. And yes, all the same things came up. And this person was
more committed to consciousness,
way more committed, so much more available. Like
because they're a reflection of where you are when you met them.
Yes. And I also think I kind of just believe in I trust myself to be like, okay, maybe I've learned that here with this one. Maybe there's another one. And I was talking to Kathy in therapy this week because I was like, something was coming up and I was like, I want to be past this. I can't believe this is coming up again. Like, why am I working on this again? I've worked on this so many times. And she's like, yeah, but it's like a coil. It's like you're coming around to the same issues over and over, but you're doing it from this deeper level, this other level of consciousness. this different level of awareness with more capacity.
You're moving up. If in a binary, if we want to make a binary, you're moving up. You know what I mean? It's like you're actually not backtracking.
No, it's deeper. She's like she's like the way you're able to be with this same thing is totally different than a year ago, totally different than 5 years ago, totally different than 20 years ago, totally different than yesterday, probably. So it's like we will keep having the same things happen, but it's not wrong or bad even to choose to do it with different people and to change the constellation up. Like, I trust myself for doing that if it's what I think it's what I want to do, I guess, if it's what seems to want to happen for whatever reason. And I really, really love the romantic part of me, the really precious, my persona that's like so special. Everything is so special, and I'm so special, and he's so special. Of course, is like, maybe it's all meant to be because we're going to come back together and blah, 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 blah. And I think for me to actually do my work around all the lessons here, if I'm doing it from a place of, well, maybe we'll be back together if I do this work. Well, maybe if I heal this, we'll be back together. That's not going to serve me. That's
the one I see in you that I see in me. The one I see in you that see in me is like, I am not going to hope. And I'm going to stay real factual about this. And I'm going to stay real in like the actual stuff and not my dreamy, happy place, because that will keep me and holding my boundaries, you know? And
it's like that Gay and Katie Hendricks Speed of Life book. You read that book, right? So they're talking about, they were talking about different ways where we do denial, how we do denial different ways. And then in the finer, more evolved ways that human beings do denial as a pattern was hopefulness. And I was like, oh my God, that's how I do it. That's how I do denial. And as a type 8 on the Enneagram, that's my main vice, is denial pattern. So I'm in a period, I guess, or I'm just putting attention on where I get into real hopefulness about the future, as a big flag for me to look at. What am I not facing about what's here right now? And what am I not facing?
And I guess I just want to say, like, I absolutely relate to that and have been there. And it's a both and, because there's hopefulness below the line and hopefulness above the line. Because above the line, there are infinite creative possibilities that are available. If we're not imaginative and we don't, like, that's a huge part of who we are, and stepping out of kind of the limitations we talked about at the beginning. Like, if we imagine something outside of Christianity, or we hope there's something else besides what we learned in Christianity that guides us to other possibilities. So it's like such a both and. It's always a both and. And part of being in duality is being willing to hold the paradox of that, like that there isn't a right, there isn't a wrong, there isn't there. None of it matters and all of it matters. We don't need to heal and we all need to heal. And like, that's a really hard, by design, it is really hard and painful to hold all of that.
I guess then what feels true for me in this moment, and this is like an area that I'm interested to put more attention on and maybe ask the universe a couple questions, is like, I'm a optimistic person. I'm like inherently hopeful. Jupiter is in my first house in Scorpio. Like, I am hopeful, optimistic. I feel great on most days. And in a lot of areas of life, I think I have access to above the line hopefulness. And in primary relationships,
like the environment. Yeah, absolutely.
The environment. I'm like, we can save the planet. Let's go. Let's do regenerative ag. Like, whatever it is. Like, I have this in most areas of life. Friends, like, what's going to happen next? Like, all this stuff. And in primary romantic relationship, I've not created a reliable experience of above the line hopefulness. I think I'm there sometimes, but mostly I use it from below the line.
Well, what comes up is what came up for me is like, I see a 3-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And that's the part of like not pathologizing our evolution, right? Because to say I haven't created, like, okay, that's partly true. And there's all these other things that are true. There's such a way we could beat ourselves up about that shit. And it's like who didn't get what they needed in there? You know, who's the 3-year-old that at a 3-year-old consciousness hopes in denial because it's survival, because if she sees her parents' most beautiful qualities, it doesn't hurt as much. Because if she really let herself see all of who they are and their mistakes or whatever, she may not be able to hold love for them, or she may pull away from them. And so like what happened to me today when they asked me, like, what would you say to that 4-year-old girl that's like, I just love so much. And I was like, shit, I wouldn't say what I'm saying to her. So I'm going to ask you, like, what would you say to that 3-year-old girl that's looking at her parents and just has so much hope for herself and her family and just sees them as the most beautiful beings on the planet?
I would tell her that it's beautiful and that it's really powerful. And that it can be scary. Probably. Like,
well, that fell from your head, but like, what about Parker? What if Parker was like, Mommy, like, you do everything perfectly. You never do. I just think like we're going to live in a palace one day, Mom. Like, I think we're going to live in a palace and we're going to be rich. What would you say to him?
I mean, part of me just wants to, I'm like, yeah, we can create whatever we want, you know, like this is a palace. Like we are there. Like part of me is like, we're there now. And part of me is like that all that stuff is, that hopefulness is good. That's just,
it's beautiful at that age.
Way to live,
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to live. Is it? And even with there's people in my life that I have my own beautiful denial, but people that it really stands out to me, and I'm like, it has allowed them to keep connecting to joy in their reality, and some of their reality is the kind of reality that if they really looked at it, or I really dealt with something like that, it would take me down in a way that I could not survive. So, yeah.
Well, what I was thinking about when I was in the shower before we got on is how the part of me, the hopefulness persona in me, or the one that you're pointing to right now that sees so much beauty and feels love so deeply, is the one that literally anyone I meet, I can see the most beautiful, best stuff. Like, and it's just right there on the surface. Like, it is just beautiful and perfect. And I love it so much. And I know that those are all projections, but like,
wait, I want to say something. What if that's the truth? This is what I'm pointing to. What if you are perceiving at a dimension of reality? Like when I say there's like fifth dimension, there are dimensions of reality that are outside of fear and outside of, what if that is the truth of who we are? And what if everything else is the illusion?
Well, here's where I go. Like, and this is pretty heady answer, but like, that's why I've dated the people I've dated, because it's literally, I can fall in love with anyone. I am a little bit in love with literally every single person that I know, even if it's a friend, even if it's what.
Oh, so excited.
And I don't want to lose that. I know that that's beautiful.
Yes. What if we all saw, like, what if everyone else, let's just flip it for the fun of this conversation. What if everyone else is the problem, quote unquote? What if actually you're walking around? Like the fact that you can fall in love with everyone is actually more. Remember Jim talking about like wanting to make love to like an aloe plant or something? And Jim and Diana, shout out to you because we've talked about you a lot this episode. But you know, like actually, I think that's the game. That is the fucking game. And then sex becomes, who do I want to allow this deeply into my energetic field?
That's it. That's where I don't use a lot of discernment. I will just, do you know what I'm saying? I will. And it's even friends too. Like I'll meet someone and in my head, I can see how we're best friends for life and we do everything together. Blah, 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 blah. But like, there is some stuff that I'm getting more clear on. And when you had asked me even 6 months ago, like, what do you most want, Bethany, out of a primary relationship? And I'd go kind of blank. I'm like, I really want to be met. I really want to be met on a certain level of that certain vibration. Like I want to be met. And there's a way where I love everybody so much and can fall literally in love with anybody that I like, I dole it out, which I think is beautiful and good. And there's like some other way where
Ooh, so much energy. Oh,
like,
well, this is what I think about. Like we're on a similar, like, you know, again, we're in different points of consciousness, but both of us are curious in different ways about this question.
yeah.
And I remember Diana one time again, and I don't talk to Diana a lot, but when I do, I listen to everything she says.
Same. Yep.
She's like, I'm like, so why monogamy? Because like this has been an exploration, marriage, monogamy, like, okay, I want to understand like for myself, what is my truth? So I'm asking her like, okay, so why the same guy for so many years?
Yeah.
And this is what she said, which was very interesting to me. She said, you know, we've just found, and I'm not using her words exactly the way she said it, but basically like it's more efficient. Like my friends who are having sex and starting relationships over and over and doing all that, they're spending lots and lots of energy over there. I have this person that I'm going deep with this one person, and we really take good care of each other. We really help, like it really makes life so much easier to have this other person. And I just keep doing my work and I keep following my aliveness and he keeps following his, and we just keep being back together. We keep staying together, and there could be a day that that's different, but do I want to keep, you know, do I want to keep starting over in this process? And like how many times or
I
how many places?
And that's what I would report, that I was happy with how the relationship, like I wanted to keep doing this with him. And like when we had the last conversation where I kind of told him I don't want to do this anymore, I was like, I want to keep doing what we're doing and do co-pilots and do consciousness together and use everything for learning. And I want to like be in each other's lives, and I want us to know each other's friends. And I want to spend a lot of time together, and I want to do all this stuff. And like, I want to make plans for the future, and I want you to meet my people, and I want to support you in your second career, and I want you to keep supporting me. And it's like partnership, even though it wasn't a sexual relationship at this point, it was friendship, a really, really deep friendship. And I was like, but you don't want that, do you? And he was like, no.
Right. And that's an answer. And the inefficiency of you, it wasn't a sexual relationship. So you're still having to get that need met somewhere else. You know what I'm saying?
Shut that down. And he was going to get it met elsewhere. Which
so I guess to me, what Diana was pointing to is like, they're in a co-committed experience where they're committed to meeting like core needs of each other. So in both of our experiences, our people are not, that's not the experience that they want to have. And grieving that and accepting that is both of our work, you know? And
I think for me, not asking for something from someone from whom it's not available.
Right. Yeah, that's for me too. Like that.
Like,
well, my biggest.
I'm not going to ask this of you. I'm not going to put it on you anymore.
Right.
But I can't be low key about it. I've been trying to be very low key about this for plus, and I don't have access to that. I can't create a different experience for myself. I want deep connection with you, and he wants deep connection too, but on these specific terms and these ways. And he wants to come and go, and it gets to change, and it's kind of on his schedule, and
there's a lot of energy leaks. It's a lot of energy, like actual energy leaks.
Yeah.
And for my denial has been, this person is carrying so much of their own work and is like beginning this healing process. And like, it really isn't even loving for me to be like, also, I want you to carry and like show up for me and be in this life partnership with me, because there's not even space for it. So it's like, I'm not being honest about what's actually loving to their nervous system, just like when you coach and you could feel like, oh, I'm pushing too hard. It's like, for me, it's been like, oh, like love is accepting where someone is, even though you see another possibility. And then now, my thing is like learning how I want to be in relationship to that awareness, how I want to engage based on that.
And I do what you said about like that way that I think both of us, I know it's true for me, I'll speak for myself, where I'm like a little bit in love with everybody and I see all the beautiful, best parts. And I'm actually not shy about it. And I will report to you on what I think is amazing and point it out whenever I see it. You know, my co-pilot came in to knowing me as someone who he felt like he was fundamentally broken and not okay and bad, and that he just hurt people, hurt women. And he reported several times to me, because I've been like, why was he here for so long? Why was he doing this? What, like, so much energy into somebody if like it's not something that you care about enough that you want to reorient and reprioritize your life around that person. Many times he has reported to me like me loving him and like loving and accepting him and seeing him as different, like as good, as truly good and truly healing and truly sweet, and like all the goodness that I would experience from him, and reporting on that to him helped him see that in himself, and that's been the most revolutionary transformational thing that he's experienced. And like he would he would cry talking about it, and that was so easy for me. It's so easy. I'm like,
it's
I'm just
your medicine, and you
and
have
that's
a
my
lot of
medicine.
medicines.
And that's what's true about what you said about how we heal each other in the collective in relationship. That's why appreciation is so important, but also just truth telling and like telling people that your impact, feedback, positive, positive or critical feedback.
But I see both of us, our gap is like, we don't always give that medicine back to ourselves. Like even in this conversation, like it's almost like you don't use any of that hope as denial on you. You know what I mean? It's like once you see a gap or a way that you're doing X, it's like I hear you kind of like repeat it in a way that's like almost like if you were to look at someone else and see, but they always do this, but you know what? Don't forget, they always do this. It's almost like I see you reminding yourself of like some of your gaps or some of the things that you need to improve upon. And I see that one in me. And so that's why I think this thing of me being my own medicine and me journeying myself and me experiencing my own field of love, and bringing those personas forward. And, and sometimes I need help. I can't always do it on my own, but that's what this whole time of like me, just so everybody knows, I usually, I have my nails done all the time, my eyelashes, I whiten my teeth, I use spray tanner. I'm really I've drawn eyebrows if I'm going to be seen in public, and I'm going through this like wild feral stage where like I sometimes shower, I wear the same thing for multiple days. It's only 2 weeks, so don't get scared. But like my eyelashes have fallen off. I haven't got my nails done, and there's something really liberating about it. I usually I'm really big on my to-do list and, kind of compulsive about always having things done around the house. And I'm just like, no. And I think, but what came up today was I kept giving this one woman feedback about feeling her controlling persona and having aversion to it. And then I'm like, well, here we go again. Where's that in me? And I'm like, I'm controlling the shit of myself at that table. I'm controlling everybody at the table. And I'm controlling me. And I'm exhausted from that. And I'm exhausted from controlling myself into something else. Or really sometimes looking over there. Sometimes I look over at this man I love and people like him who are on the other side of the spectrum that can just cut somebody off at the top of the hat and, are so independent and like don't miss people, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I want to be like that.
That's the biggest trigger for me with my
I can idealize that. And I'm like, no, that is not loving yourself. That is not accepting the medicine that you are. And when I believe that, then I feel like almost like I deserve to not have my needs met, right? But when I feel like, oh, like a part of who I am is to love, and I want to love and I want to be loved in return, then I start believing that need deserves to be met. And then I believe I can have an experience where it is met.
Yeah. I think I probably have a little bit of shutdown going on these days of like a little bit of protection armor stuff. because I'm believing a lot of stories of like, oh, you give it all away, Bethany. You fall in love with everybody. Like, oh, you just give it all away. You're giving away all your magic and you're not getting anything back.
That's the
I
persona
just,
today.
and
And
so
there
like,
is an intelligence in that, and we can use it to beat ourselves up. That's the both and. Like, the and is like, from a loving place, we could look and say, baby, like little Bethany, like your love is so precious, it's so beautiful. Like, you know, give it to these safe people, give it to these people that love you, give it to these people that can give it back to you just for a while. And maybe later you'll pick someone that doesn't give it back as much as you want, but maybe you'll be ready and more nourished and for that lesson, because for a while you just gave it to safe people.
mm-hmm.
And that's really different than telling her like, girl, get your shit together and hold that shit back and lock it up down there. You know what I mean?
I have a little more of that going on.
Yeah, me too. I had that yesterday, even when I was talking to him, I was literally processing out loud, and I'm just like, I was like, it hurts so much to miss you. Like, there is something wrong with me. Like, why do I care this way about you? Why do I miss you so much? What is wrong with me that I keep creating this suffering for myself? Like, I must be doing life wrong. I must be doing healing wrong. There's something I'm missing. Like, it was just boom, boom, boom. And that was the big aha today, was like, that's the X'd out persona too.
Yeah.
That's the narcissist in me, the sociopath in me, who's attacking the little victims in me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one at the head of the table, the big L, the one that is perceived through love, she can hold and see that sociopathic one is a 4-year-old that got really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That's beating up on a 2-year-old that got really hurt, that both decided in different ways of like, either love is scarce or love is painful.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be trusted. And Big L sits at the table with all of them and looks at them and says, love is always here and I am always here. Mm-hmm. And whatever need it is that's not met is available to you from this space.
Mm-hmm. Mic drop.
Mic drop. This was fun. I'm so glad. This is really my major intention for this podcast, is like, I need a place to process out loud a lot of this stuff that happens. And there's something, once I process it a few times, it's like, oh, it's not even there. I can't even pull it up. So I was like, Bethany, can we do it right now? Or can we do it today? Because
I'm all for doing that. And I'm just going to get out some agreements with my kids where when I have them on my own, that if we want to do this, that we can, I'm going to get them on board with some kind of agreement. We got to talk about what they have a yes to. You're beautiful. This has been great. Beautiful.
Thanks for being my witness and my listener.
God, I love it. I feel so lucky.
I really love all the energy I'm running though. Like, when I move through these things, it's like I'm like, oh, I could shake right now if I really, really let the energy just.
Actually, anytime, Lauryn, you feel a shake or feel some of that shakiness, let it. Let your body shake. That is actually a discharge of something in you. Yeah, that's awesome. That's perfect. That's in Essie. We talk about that. I
usually just get on the Peloton, but we can do this instead.
It allows the release of the trauma that was in your body, like whatever came in and became whole. Like, that is the release of that stuff. Yes. Yeah.
Woo, I'm gonna regret this video later. I guarantee. I'm gonna be like, so I'll make a commitment right now. If I tell you I don't want this one on,
we're posting this one.
It's posting. It's gonna be posted, but I'm like, that's gonna be the one I'm gonna be like, just skip past that video. Don't worry about that. Okay, I'm gonna go. Love you.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, if you've got any feedback for us, we welcome it, or ideas about future guests, email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com. We are at Healing Podcast on Twitter, and we are at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Monda Creative, who edits all of our podcasts, and Two Tall Women Productions, who produce. Thank you.